Hey, 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 it's Dr. Day. Hope you've been having a fantastic day. Just wanted to pop in. I had someone to ask me a question, and this is the same person that, like I previously said, I don't mention people names, but I just mention situations and actions that happen to bring me to the where I'm at now to even talk about it, just to share, my opinion. Everybody have the opinion, but I have this particular associate, friend, whatever you want to call her, sister. I love her dearly, but she just continued to continue. It's a continuous thing of issues, and it's always with men. It's always with men. This is what I don't understand. And so, ladies, you got to love yourself enough to walk away. You have to love yourself to know that when a person show you who they are, that exactly who they are. You have to walk away even though you might feel that you're lonely or that you want someone to talk to or you just want to be in a relationship with someone. Y'all excuse me for 1 second. Okay. And you just got to walk away. So as I was listening to her, it made me start thinking about one of the chapters in my book, Single and Sold Out to God. And the first chapter in the book, I call it the Why Me Syndrome. And I'm going to explain that in a few minutes. Now, whenever you're talking about why me, why is something that you ask yourself for what purpose, the reason, why is this always happening? Why? And when we talk about the word syndrome, we're talking about something that consistently occurs. So as I said, I call it my why me syndrome. Let me give you an example. Why, when I get in a relationship, it always ends. Why I always have this baby mama drama. Why is it that I can't love myself? Why is it I can't look like someone else? Why is it that my relationships just seem like a revolving door? I get in one relationship and then I'm in another relationship. You ever notice a revolving door that when you go in it and you push it, it swings around? And sometimes, and I know this has happened to me, I pushed it and I didn't, when it got to the point where I had to exit, I didn't, so I went around again. And so that's what relationships are like. You push in yourself in a relationship and it goes around and around like a carousel, a merry-go-round. And when it's time for you to get out the relationship, you just stay there. So you spin around and you spin around and around, and it becomes a constant thing for you. You validate whatever the person attitude or their behavior. You find excuses for that person. And so, as I said, this particular individual is always, why me? Why I can't find my significant other? Why I have this baby daddy mama drama? Why is it my self-esteem is so low? Why is it that I continuously find myself in adulterous relationships? Why I can't love myself? Why I have these bitter disappointments? So it's always a continuous of why. And you have to look and understand why these things are happening. They're just not a happen chance. They just don't happen because they just happening. You're the common denominator. That's what I keep saying. And I had to learn this, that we are our common denominator of everything that happened in our life. We are the result of the end of whatever happened, the outcome of what happened. You have the ball in your court, for lack of a better term. You control the narrative. You control the situation. But if you always want to be in a pity party, that's exactly where you're going to be. You're going to be in that pity party, and the only people that's going to be at the party is you. because the other person that you're having this pity party for, 9 times out of 10, they done moved on. I'm beginning to understand, and like when Tony Gaston's point blank period, like he said, and I'm not saying all men are like this. I'm not beating up men or nothing like that. But I have learned, and maybe it's the type of people that I'm running, coming in contact with. Being that, I had been in relationships, was married 25 years, my husband was deceased and all that. And, went into a relationship with, one particular person. Matter of fact, I'd never been in a continuous revolving door relationships as like my friend. One person that I was with after, my husband deceased and all that. So we was in a relationship for a number of years. And I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm talking about over 25 years I was in this relationship. And the ironic thing about the whole thing is, even after this, over 25, and some of you might have heard, it was 30 something years that I gave to this relationship. Okay. And at the same time as I gave to the relationship, I had my why me syndromes. Why is he not asking me to marry him? Why is this and why is that? And it wasn't until God said, okay, baby girl, you can't get rid of this person, so I'm going to have to sever these connections, and I'm going to have to do it for you. And I thank God for it, because now that I look back, I see myself as my friend. I see myself as one holding on, because I'm a nurturer just by nature, and women, we are nurturers, and we tend to hold on to stuff, where men, as whenever they get tired or whenever they feel like they want to move on, for whatever case it might be, there's various reasons why men get in relationships. And I don't want to always be saying that they get what they want and then they move on. Okay. In some cases that's it. But, in my case with the relationship that I was with this particular person, it wasn't even really about a sexual thing, because like I tell people, you can get sex from anybody. I mean, that should not even be the number one focus in your relationship. You should be trying to be in a relationship with someone who's going to push you and you push them. You're going to be their Aaron, hold their arms up, and they're going to be your Aaron, holding your arms up. And two of you are together, and you're trying to reach a goal and purpose in life. But when the other person is not where you at, and unfortunately in my relationship, I kept asking why. He knew where I was standing with the Lord. He knew me from years, even before we even started talking. We knew each other, okay? He knew me when I was married to my husband. He never said nothing to me out the way when we was married. And, he explained that he wasn't that type of person. But, after my husband passed and all that stuff, we got together. But I was constantly asking, why would he not want to marry me? So I became that why me person. I kept asking, why is this and why is that? Well, today in 2025, y'all, I still don't have the answer. I don't have no connection with him. Up until 4 years ago, he called and, and all that stuff. And then I had to just let it go, because I just didn't want to continue to be asking why. So as I was thinking about people, and like I said, my friend, she called and she was asking why she always in relationships and why this. I thought about us as people, as human beings. And one of the things that I came up with, and this is just me and this is just my story, somebody else might have a different story, is that because we're humans and we're in the flesh, too often everything that we jump into, everything that we get into is really not I don't know the word. It's lust. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. It's lust. And the other thing is we lie to ourselves and we don't be honest when we see situations and circumstances happening. We start making excuses. And so the scripture, 1 John 1:6 says, if we claim that we share life with him, talking about Jesus Christ, but keep walking in the realm of darkness, we're fooling ourselves and not living the truth. And that's unfortunately what we do. Okay, we walk in darkness. Everything that looks good, feels good, like the flesh wants to be appeased. The flesh love to have that self gratification. The self always, like I said, want to be pleased and appeased. And when we see something and it looks good to us, we always want to sample what it is that we see, for a lack of a better term. And a good example is when Eve was in the garden. Now, it doesn't say, how long that the apple was hanging from the tree, and it doesn't tell us how long Adam and Eve was in the garden. It just said that God created this utopia for them to live in. Everything was perfect and everything, and he gave them everything that they would need to continue to stay in their happiness. And I'm quite sure Eve passed this apple millions of times. She had to. On her way to work, on her way taking the kids to, Cain and Abel, to the soccer practice. I'm just using that example. And I'm quite sure she's seen this apple, and not maybe one time she thought about even touching it, because, after God told Adam, the specifics and the rules about everything in the tree in the middle of the garden, and all that stuff. He had to share it with Eve. She knew the specifics and the parameters of what would happen. Didn't know per se that they were going to be banished from the garden, but they knew that there was going to be some consequences if they did what God said not to do. So Eve, she had to have seen this apple, but it wasn't until the enemy brought it to her attention where it began to look appealing to her. So now she's getting this whole perception in her mind, because, this mind, this imagination can take you places that you might not never go. And so in her mind, she began to visualize, and probably even her salivary glands and, her taste buds, all of that probably changed. Just like if you go into a restaurant and you order a steak and you're sitting there and you're waiting for your food to come, and then when they come and they set the plate down, it's all of a sudden you get this stuff in your, your taste buds, and everything get to going all over the place, because now you're looking at something and it's right in front of you and it's pleasing to the eye, and your mind has started to think about, when you take that first bite, how is it going to taste? Is it going to taste the way it looks on this plate? And so Eve probably thought about all of this, and we all know the story. And for those who might not know the story, read Genesis. It's the first book of the Bible, so it's not complicated. Well, you don't know where it's at, because it's the first book of the Bible. Read the story, from the time of the beginning, when the world was created, and when God created Adam and Eve, and he put them in their first home. And they became the first home. They became the first married couple. They became the first family unit. And see, if you don't get the picture in your mind that, like I said, it was all these fruits there. It was all this stuff that was look and pleasing to the eye. But there was this one, it was something about that one fruit, that apple. Now, I'm quite sure if it was probably hundreds of apples on that apple tree, okay? But something lured her to this one particular apple. That's just me. This is my story. And this is the way we are. It's something about that individual, it's something about that person that lures you into them. And once you get there, then you have crossed the line with yourself. Now the hormones, and everything starts racing, and you be like, what if, what if, what if, what if? And in order to satisfy that what if, then you start to indulge and go forward. And then this is where you come later on, after you realize that what you have indulged in, what you have went forward for, what you thought was pleasing, and what you thought was good for you was not good for you. It became like you ate something and you thought it was good, and then all of a sudden your stomach became upset. This is how relationships are sometimes. It could be good for a while, and then all of a sudden, we as humans, we have our emotions, we have our attitudes, we have all kind of stuff going on, which changes the dynamics of the two individuals, unless you are both connected spiritually to God. If God and Jesus is the center and the nucleus of your relationship, then the relationship it's no way that it can flourish. God has to be the center, and Jesus have to be the motivating factor in the relationship. If not, then you're going to be asking yourself, like I said, she called, why me? Why am I always in this revolving relationships? And it's unfortunately in her case because she know the Lord. She served the Lord. Not saying that I'm perfect. I'm by no means, but I have learned because I went through a revolving door. Now, like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of revolving door with men, but I had this one revolving door with this particular person, and he revolved out of my life. We were together for 15 years. He revolved out for 11. Then he revolved back then for 7. And he revolved back out for 4. So you do the math. That's over 30 something years that I allowed myself to be like her and keep asking the question, why? Now, the first time it happened, I should have just left it at that. But, it was during the time that we were not together, the 11 years. I was gung-ho for the Lord. That's how my books came out. That I was, on fire for the Lord. Received my calling, my license. I'm just gung-ho for the Lord. Just serving the Lord with all my might and trying to be the best daughter that God could have. I was just so proud of myself that I allowed myself to get out the relationship. Well, I ain't gonna say I got out, because he broke up with me then, and kind of the second time the same way, but then God expedited and pushed it faster, where he became the one that served the tithes and, was good. But I do want to say, even though in the time that it was served, I still began to ask, why? And then I had to, you have to go through these little things, because ladies, let's be truthful. We're trying to understand, is there something wrong with me? Do I not look good enough? And because the culture and society says we supposed to look like this, is it because my body is not shaped like some kind of exotic person, So all this little crazy stuff was going through my mind. But I have come to learn, and in the pain that I endured and going through that relationship and asking why, I've come to learn this, which has helped me. Number one, I had to acknowledge the pain and be honest. It hurt. Yes, it did hurt. Okay? It did hurt, but I got over it. It was a lesson. I learned something from it, I learned this time if God sends whoever into my life, like I always be saying, I ain't looking for no Boaz. I'm looking for a Joseph. I want somebody to, Boaz was fine. He had a lot and all that, but I want Joseph to lead me, to be, like I said, my Aaron. And so if God allows, my Joseph to enter my life, and I'm at that season in that time in that juncture, I do want a significant other, and if it don't happen, then I'm fine. I'm well with that. But I learned to acknowledge the pain that I was going through. I acknowledged that the situation, some of it, I contribute to it, because I could have let go a long time ago, but I held on. I acknowledged that the pain I went through is because the first time when he left, and then 11 years later, after you done went and sold your wild oats out there doing whatever you was doing and whoever you was doing it with, I allowed you to come back in my spirit, in my space, and take me through the same drama that I went through before. So ladies, you got to acknowledge the pain. You got to acknowledge whatever it is going on in your life. You got to acknowledge that you're the common denominator. And if you keep on doing the same thing, you're going to keep on getting the same results. Then number 2, I had to stop thinking life was singling me out. What can I learn from this? I had to stop thinking, well, is it because of me? What's wrong with me? You know how you want to be looking in, comparing yourself. I remember when I was young, and I've told this story before, my complexion, guys used to call me darky, and, just all kind of crazy stuff. The little guys, they ain't know no better, but it is what it is. And so I was, single myself out saying, well, why I can't be like that other person, that high yellow young lady over there? Why I can't be like this? Why my body can't be shaped like that? And da-da-da-da-da. But I've learned it doesn't really matter, okay? It's every situation, and every time he left, I learned a lesson from it. And this is what you have to do, ladies. You have to learn a lesson from relationships. Okay? You have to sit, even if you sit down, take a Selah moment, get a notebook, piece of paper, and if you have to, hopefully you don't have a whole bunch of categories, you know what I'm saying, people you're talking to, but if you do, no condemnation, it's all good, okay? And see what you learned from John. There was a lesson. People come in your life for reasons, and people come in your life for season. So that season, when John was in your life, what lesson did you learn from him that gonna make you a better woman for the next person who's gonna be possibility if you looking for a Boaz or if you looking for a Joseph? What lesson did you learn? So I had to stop singling myself out, and I had to sit down and analyze, what I learned from that lesson. And there was quite a few things that I learned. And so now when I go into the next relationship, if it's in the will of God, then I'm going to be okay. I'm going to know how to handle myself a little bit better, even though all those years I was younger. And so now that I'm in a senior age, I'm more mature, I've learned and I've gained some wisdom. So you got to stop thinking that you're just by yourself on an island and you're the only person that's going through the why me syndrome or whatever stuff is going on in your life. You have to stop stop singling yourself out and take with a grain of salt the lessons that you learned and move forward. Then I also had to learn to not allow what happened become my reality. Okay? I was not the mistake. I might have contributed to the mistake, but I was not the mistake. So you have to allow whatever it is, I'm not allowed, but you have to don't allow that if that person break up with you, that the reality is you're going to be by yourself the rest of your life. You are not the mistake. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay? It might be something wrong with that person. In my case, the individual, make a long story short, he was married and his wife had 2 kids out of their marriage. And so, he had this issue with trust. So not only me, but every relationship that he went into, he could not trust. So he brought all his excess baggage both times into our relationship. The first time I learned it, the second time, I've said, okay, well, maybe he dealt with that. But then it wasn't towards the end of us breaking up that he finally got the results of those 2 kids. And, unfortunately, it was like I had told him Jump Street that it was somebody he knew. And make a long story short, that's exactly what happened. Those 2 kids that out of their marriage was someone that he knew and someone very close to him. That's all I'm going to say. So, you're not the mistake. You got to understand that the individual that you're dealing with, he has, and if you're male, she have her own issues. She have her own stuff going on, but don't you be the one to take the blame that everything that happened, it was because of you. Then the other thing I had to do was replace myself of not being a victim and having a victim mentality and change it with purpose. Because I could have just, when he left the second time, I did go through a little, like sad mode and everything. But as time went on and the no connection and no contact, that helped tremendously. And so now I took everything that I learned and it became my purpose. It became my drive. So this is when I wrote my second book, which is called Soul Hydration. And, it's on Amazon. You can get it. And I'm not trying to sell it, but what it talks about in the book is how because we allow emotions and the will and all those, human things to get in our way, it begins to deplete our spiritual life. And because our soul is dehydrated, we move further and further away from God. And so if he hadn't broke up with me this time, I might be still wandering around in the wilderness with this, with the person. He was a nice person. I don't have nothing bad to say about him. Still love him dearly with the love of the Lord. And, I don't know where he at, what he doing. But I hope all is well with him, because when I'm doing my prayers, I keep him in prayer. But I didn't allow myself to become a victim and stay in that woe me pity like I was telling her. And I tell her this over and over, but I've come to the conclusion today that the next time she calls me with some stuff about a man, I'm going to tell her enough is enough. Because we've been going around this mountain and this molehill for the last 20 years, 30. I've been knowing her for a long time. Even when I was in college, I knew her and I knew the relationships, and she just has not changed. She got married. Her husband is deceased, and I just can't do it no more. I don't have the bandwidth, nor I have the energy. I'm trying to focus on, like I said, since I didn't allow myself to become a victim, I have purpose. And one of my purposes is to come on here and talk and to share, feelings and share, wisdom or whatever. And I know there's billions of people that sharing their wisdom and sharing their ideas. That's, that's what I'm finding, because there's billions and billions of people that need to hear, because something that I share, somebody else can resonate, and somebody else have something and that person can resonate. So everybody you can't get stuff from. It takes different people for whatever area in your life that you at that moment that somebody else can contribute. You just, maybe you take a bit piece here and a piece here, and it's like a puzzle. You have all these little pieces and you put it together and it makes a complete picture, and then now maybe you're able to move forward in your life. So I just popped on here this afternoon to just tell somebody, stop going and being in a why me syndrome. Okay, stop being in a pity party. Your why me, stop worrying about what was your purpose or your reason. Okay, and if it continues to consistently keeps going on, then you're the common denominator. So take that, whatever that pain and that why me, and don't worry about why it happened. Do something constructive with it, and allow God to work on you. Allow God to heal you, and then until you're able to be healed and worked on, you're no good for the kingdom. And God, there's plenty of room for people in the kingdom. God is always looking for his servants. God is always looking for those who know the truth and wants to share the truth. Now, everybody ain't going to want to hear the truth, because the truth going to set you free. So people want to be in denial. People want to say, no, this is not it. But until they are ready to accept that they are the common denominator, and if they're not ready to accept it, and if they not walking like the scripture said, if we claim that we share life with him but keep walking in the realm of darkness, we're fooling ourselves and not living the truth. So you don't be one of those individuals fooling yourself. Because why? As you keep on fooling yourself, baby, you're going to stay in darkness. So y'all, on that note, I just wanted to say to somebody, to my sister, my brother, or somebody, get out of the why me syndrome and walk in the light that God has for you. On that note, Dr. Day says, see ya.